All right, YouTube, I may not take corporate money, but if it was going to be a corporation, it'd probably come in caffeinated form in a can, let's face it. It's time to talk about the Obamacare stuff. I know it's taken a sideline. Yesterday, people talked about it some, but then the Trump wiretap stuff erupted, and all of a sudden, everyone forgot all about what Rand Paul was doing. But I happen to agree with him largely. Obamacare would not have been a problem in the first place if it had been a transparent sort of operation to get it implemented. That is, the fact that the bill was thousands of pages of of legalese, it was enormous. Nobody read it. Nobody really got a chance to read it. It was sort of passed in the dead of night. That was the fundamental issue with Obamacare to begin with. The particularly abusive parts of the bill never would have gotten through. They would have been bogged down and stripped back out of Obamacare, and it would actually be in semi-working form at least if it hadn't been rushed through in a anything but transparent process. It was about as transparent as a slab of marble, let's face it. The concept of fining people for being unable to afford a plan in a state where there's no competition and there's only one company servicing you, that never would have gotten through. It would have been, even the left wouldn't have voted in favor. They would have been like, well, it's going to be political suicide. It's going to lead to somebody like Donald Trump getting elected next time around. We're going to piss everybody off. The concept of not having cross-state competition at all probably wouldn't have gotten through. I know the Democrats pretend that they don't like that sort of competition, but does it really matter to them whether they're taking bribes from one pharma company over another? I don't think that they really fucking care. There probably would have been an attempt to implement competitive drug pricing, possibly imports. Probably not, but at least more competition there. Maybe some other form of reform, so to speak. And at the end of the day, the Republicans wouldn't have just walked off and said, well, the Democrats have the ability to pass this, and so we're not even going to get involved. No, they would have stood and argued the point. It actually would have been the proper form for a bill to take. So the opacity with which Obamacare was passed in the first place was one of the big sticking points. That's true for people on the left too, who got screwed by this. Their problem isn't with the fundamental concept of overhauling healthcare in the country. Their problem is that it was a sort of dead of night deal. And of course, Pelosi comes out and says, oh, we have to pass it to find out what's in it, which is the most remarkably stupid thing she or anybody else has said in recent decades. My worry is not with Trump here. I don't want people to think that I'm criticizing him. We have to understand the separation of powers. The ball is in the court of the legislature right now. Higher up Republicans like Paul Ryan are the ones making this right now an opaque process. Trump is not coming in and saying, oh, I want this, this, and this. Here's my draft of the bill. That's not how it works. The legislature is looking through this and trying to overhaul it. Meanwhile, people like Rand, who aren't in that inner circle of budget committee senators and so forth, don't have actual access to the material that's being produced, which means you will probably get another long, arcane bill in which problems that already existed with Obamacare haven't necessarily been removed or solved in some way, in which you could have new problems arise as well. What we need is transparency. What form the fix takes, whether they're scrapping it and replacing it entirely or reforming the bill that's there or whatever the hell they happen to be doing, regardless, it should be up to the scrutiny of other people within Congress. It should also be up to the scrutiny of the public. The entire bill, in its draft form, should simply be placed online for people to review. That's what they should be doing. Unfortunately, it looks like people like Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell don't want that, probably because the solutions that they want to implement are going to ingratiate the same corporations that back their sort of neocon campaigns. These people are not exactly friendly, by the way, to Trump. They probably don't want to fully solve the issue. I think they're terrified that if they actually make a working healthcare fix and implement it, they do it properly to great public adulation. They don't botch the rollout like fucking Obama did when he carpet-bagged Michelle's friends in there to actually run the Obamacare website. We all remember that fiasco for fucking weeks and weeks. It had total problems and was almost non-functioning for months thereafter. There were security problems. if they implement something that is actually good, that works and is largely popular, again, regardless of what form that takes, and it'd be hard to get the left won over on the issue, I'm sure, then they're probably worried Trump becomes more widely approved of and that they'll have to keep dealing with him. But if they can craft a bill and manage to get it through Trump, if they can keep him from vetoing it, if they can somehow hoodwink him, I suppose, and he should be, I think, working very closely with Rand on this specific issue and any allies that he can muster to prevent this from happening if he knows what's good for him politically, because he can't trust people like Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell. If they can get something passed that's screwy, that's fucked up, that has something buried on page 900 that's actually going to render it just as non-functioning, they say, oh, it wasn't our fault. Trump never proposed a change to this. He just signed it as soon as it got on his desk or something like that, which may be a problem. Now, do I think Trump would make that mistake? I don't know. In his haste, because this was such a major issue, in his haste to look like he's taking the bull by the horns and acting very quickly to fix the problems associated with Obamacare, he may jump the gun and do that. And that would be something that he should be warned against doing. Take a good long look at the bill, if they even get it scrapped out, so to speak. If they actually manage to flesh this out, turn it into a reform of some sort, put it on his desk, they've passed it, the House and Senate. If they actually get it before him, he should consider vetoing it if he can't reasonably set aside the time to read it. And he should do that he should partner with the more sane elements of the Republican Party, the Amashes and the Rand Pauls, and say, well, you know, you manufactured this. I never really got to read it, and I don't really have 6 months to do so. You never let these other people see what you were doing. You just bogged it down in some committee within Congress. Therefore, how can I sign this? You need to go back. You need to show me specifically what proposals are in here, and you need to let these other people review it too, and do so over a span of time that's reasonable for the length of whatever reforms you're actually proposing. See, if he wants to take the bull by the horns, he needs to find some more steadfast allies within Congress to help him out with this. Because he's the chief executive. He's not in the legislature. Sometimes people forget that. Even with Obamacare, Obama got the ball rolling. But ultimately, a bunch of people in Congress, in association with the health insurance industry, for-profit corporate entities, and Big Pharma, were the ones that actually wrote this. The fact that Obama had some of his allies sitting in allowed him to corrupt it even further, because of course that was the point. He was getting money from these big bankers and pharma companies and so forth. Trump hasn't apparently taken their money. I have hope that he can get this solved, but if you don't have transparency in the process, people aren't even going to trust the end result, especially not the people who have spent years now saying it's a bad idea, we should scrap Obamacare, at the very least it should be massively overhauled. The one saving grace here is that Trump has already negated the fine involved, which was probably the most partisan thing that actually arose out of Obamacare. The idea of fining people for not being able to afford insurance in a climate where there are insurance monopolies, where you're required to either pay Uncle Sam or pay the insurance company, is morally wrong, illegal in many senses. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It defeats the very point of trying to say, oh, well, it's the Affordable Care Act. We want people to be able to afford things. But then if you can't afford them because you got screwed based on what state you happen to reside in and what company happens to operate there and what plans the government deems available, proper for you to actually purchase, well, then screw you. Millions of people get screwed. A lot of times the Democrats talk about, oh, well, more people are enrolled in health insurance. Yeah, but a lot of those are very crappy plans anyway, like the junk plans that you yourselves tried to ban and had success at doing so, unfortunately. They're basically the same thing, only with a smiley face on them. A lot of them are people that are totally subsidized, that are, you know, that's why you've got the fine, because you've got to pay for those additional subsidies. A lot of others are either paying somewhat more for the same plan, or they've got a plan that's crappier and they're paying the same amount. They drop down a level, so to speak. You've created artificial tiers and monopolies within our healthcare system. You've done the opposite of reform it. You've made it worse. Obamacare is worse than the already interventionist system that we were employing prior. There are other ways around this. Interstate competition is certainly one of them. Encouraging companies to compete will drive costs down. You can drive the cost of medical stuff down further through deregulation. Not every regulation that's put on a hospital or a nursing unit or something has to do with patient care. Not all of them do. Some of them are just bureaucracy. Go through with a fine-tooth comb and pick those bits out, you'll drop the cost a little bit further. And that's how it should be handled. That appears to be the way that Trump was originally talking about it, the way that people like Rand have talked about it for years now, and that's the more proper way to go forward. My worry is that the Obamacare fix is the Obamacare fix is in, so to speak, specifically because, what exactly is in the fix? Well, we don't exactly know now, do we? It's still in some committee behind locked doors, so to speak, so that Rand and these others, they make it, now, it is some theatrics, of course. He walks up, says, oh, I demand to see the bill, and of course they're not going to let him see it, and then he holds the little mini press conference. And Rand tends to get inordinately angry at times like that, and then he mouths off. Sometimes he puts his foot in his mouth, honestly. But the premise is correct. Yes, it should be transparent. Any fix that is implemented should be publicly available for perusal. It should certainly be made available to the rest of Congress, not just some committee. And Trump, hopefully, if the fix doesn't actually fix anything, will veto it and say, well, this isn't what I had in mind. Try again this next time. Whether or not, what they might do is drag it out longer and longer. Wait until it's closer to the midterms so he has no choice but to sign it for fear that the Democrats would retake the Senate and then he wouldn't be able to get that accomplished. It's possible. I think that he's more forthright than that. I think that he is moving quite quickly here in most respects. Other than the whole lock her up thing, which people totally forgot about. I'm not sure exactly why. But hopefully it gets fixed. Well, it is necessary. You don't want people to, suffer under some epidemic because you've got a weak medical system, but at the same time you don't want to screw people who either don't want to participate in having health insurance. They shouldn't get fined. They shouldn't get screwed in some way. They shouldn't have to pay more taxes because other people want health insurance. It's not a right. It is a privilege. That's number one. Number two, you want it to be somewhat efficient. The only real way to do that is to deregulate. Has nothing to do with slapping more bureaucrats into the process. It's going to make it worse over time. That's about all. Peace out.